Our content analysis was on YouTube thumbnails for toy review videos on popular toy review channels. These channels were typically targeted towards preschool aged children. My name is Lamia Deckard.
And I'm Corey Brown. So, social constructionists look at the context of gender differences to find if there is gendered social expectations. A meta-analysis has found gender differences that are consistent with this model. So in terms of age, infants don't show gender differences with emotional expression, but it will start to emerge around toddler and preschool years. And in the interpersonal context, children are more likely to show gender differences in emotional expression when they are in front of a stranger, as opposed to a parent, where they're more likely to act like their authentic self. And then the demand to change emotions, girls will mask negative emotions more than boys. So in the context of like the disappointed gift, girls will like hide their disappointed feelings, where boys are more likely not to do that.
So, in the article by Zimmerman, the researcher ran a chi-square test, and tested verbal, attention, and then non-emotional responses for children ages 3 to 6 to see if preschoolers would associate commercials with different genders. The results from this showed that there was a significant difference in children's identification of each ad, meaning that clearly boys can see which ads were targeted towards boys and girls can see which ads were targeted towards girls, and then they could both see which ads were gender neutral. Research also showed that boys were more likely to prefer male targeted commercials and then neutral targeted commercials, whereas girls were kind of in between. They did not care whether or not the commercial was girl targeted or boy targeted or neutral. They felt that whatever was being shown in the commercial, they could play with the toy regardless of who it was targeted to. Research also showed that there was a mix between stereotypical, so boys watching boys commercials and girls watching girls commercials, versus non-stereotypical reactions, so boys and girls both feeling like they could watch and play with either type of toy or watch either type of commercial. Next, we have our hypothesis. So we had three different hypotheses based on our literature reviews. These hypotheses supported our idea that gender differences in emotional expression and attention to ads. Our first hypothesis was that boys will play with toys that are more gender targeted than girls in their YouTube thumbnails. And then our second hypothesis was that girls would appear to be more likely to pose in their thumbnails compared to boys. Lastly, our third hypothesis was that boys will appear more expressive in their thumbnails compared to girls as well. And then for our method section. So the first thing we did was we opened up YouTube. Once that was nice and running, we typed into the search bar children toy reviews. We then looked at the top review toy channels that were provided by YouTube. Of the top review channels, we chose 3 of the top rated channels for boys and then 3 of the top rated channels for girls. From there, we went on to take screenshots of each of the different boy and girl channels' top 5 recent videos. Um, at the end, this resulted in a total of 30 thumbnails.
So for coding, we coded gender. Gender would be 1 for boy and then 2 for girl. We coded each video on how gender targeted the toy or the activity or the object in the video was, whatever was centering in the video other than the child. And that was based on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 would be gender neutral, and then 100 would be gender targeted. So, either it's targeted to boys or it's targeted to girls, so girl toys or boy toys. And if there was no toy or activity or object that seemed to be the center of the video, we just scored it as 0. We coded on how candid the photograph looked on a scale of 0 to 100. So 0 would be obviously posing for a picture, and 100 would be like clear movement, either like anticipating the movement of most of their body. So 50 would be like anticipating movement, maybe like half their body. We also coded the emotional expression on the child's face. So 0 would be like a neutral smile, and then 100 would be like extremely excited. So I have 2 examples here. We got the girl, she's 2 because she's a girl, and then the pose is 15 because she's near the bag. You can assume that she might open it, but overall it still kind of looks like a pose. And then the type of toy is an 80 because it's a bag. It's not a purse, so it's not totally gender typical, right? Because girls tend to have purses. But you could tell by the art that it is meant for girls because it's got rainbows and flowers and stuff. And the expression I put like in the middle, 50, because she's got her hand up. She looks like she's surprised, but her face is still kind of very neutral. And over here we got toy review Ryan, 1 for boy, 20 for pose because his legs out. You can anticipate he's gonna be walking, he's moving his legs. And then type of toy, this isn't a toy, it is an activity, and that is the floor is lava. And so 60 for that because that can be considered a boy activity. It's a game, more of a boy game. And then expression 80 because he's got like a really shocked face. And then for our results, the inter-rater reliability, the Chromevox alpha was 0.958. This is considerably high, like the cap was supposed to be about 0.95. And the reason why this was so high for like subjective variables was because when we submitted our code book, we submitted code for each of the examples with our code book. So this might have been a suggestion to our raters, and that's why they probably put similar results with similar scores as we did. So we did 3 independent sample t-tests to test our hypotheses. The first hypothesis about boys playing with gender targeted toys more often than girls was not supported. There was no significant differences between the type of toys that boys played with and the type of toys that girls played with. Gender did not determine whether a child was playing with a gender neutral or gender targeted toy. And so the next independent sample t-test, there was a significant difference between the expression that boys had in the photo and the expression that girls had in the photo. And this was consistent with our hypothesis. Boys were more excited than girls. Girls tend to have more of a neutral smile. And then another independent sample t-test did not find any significant differences between the stance, like the pose the child was in the picture. There was no gender differences in that. Gender of the child did not determine whether the child was posing or playing in the thumbnail. So here's the SPA graph that shows that gender differences with emotional expression. Boys had more excitement shown in the YouTube thumbnail than girls. Girls tend to have just a neutral smile. So you can see that there is a mean difference between them.
Okay. So this is just a reiteration of our findings. We did find that gender of the children does not determine whether or not they play with gender neutral toys or gender targeted toys. It was pretty much 50-50, either or within both genders. We also found that girls were less expressive than boys. So as Corey previously mentioned, boys were more likely to show excitement in their thumbnails, whereas girls were more likely to kind of just smile and pose. We also found that gender plays no role in whether or not a child was posing or playing in their thumbnail. Okay, so for our discussion and then implication and application, the first is gender norms. So gender norms were actually not prominent in our research finding. We found that, again, boys and girls play with both gender targeted toys as well as gender neutral toys. It's pretty much 50-50 in that area.
So the differences in socialization, though, were still present, and this is consistent with the social constructionist theoretical model, which is that gender differences may exist because of the social context, because there's like social pressure to act how the stereotype thinks you should act. And so the emotional expression, there were some gender differences in the YouTube thumbnail, which is considered a social context because it's like, it's for media, it's for other people to watch and consume. So anyway, so this supports previous research on gender differences in emotional expressions in the social context. Also, girls tended to have just a neutral smile, where boys were more excited. And this seems like it's consistent with like girls' tendency to internalize. So girls in these YouTube thumbnails did not show very much excitement. They were just like, smile, everything is just neutral. So this seems like it's kind of similar to how like girls will internalize their negative emotions more often than boys. And then Lamaya.
And then it also eliminates the limitation process. So it eliminates the possibility of alienation amongst children. So if there are children who do not identify with a certain gender identity or do not feel as if they should play with boy targeted toys or girl targeted toys because they do not identify with being a boy or a girl, we feel that our research shows that there is a limitation. There's no limitation in this process. So children aren't being forced to fit into one frame. Okay, and then for our future research, so for one thing that we feel that should happen is there should be further exploration of the influences that shapes a child's perception of gender media, well, gender targeted media, basically, which means how would this affect the child in the future? So for instance, if a child does feel like toys and commercials are gender targeted now or gender neutral now, how would they feel in the future? In the future, would they still believe that girls can play with boy targeted toys and boys can play with girl targeted toys? Or as they get older, would they develop this mindset that boys can only play with boy toys and girls can only play with girl toys? We also want to do, or we also think that further research should be done to compare posing pictures of thumbnails to the child's behavior in the video, basically seeing what are the gender differences and emotional expressions exist. For us, we did have a difficult time finding literature reviews that actually focused on YouTube thumbnails. So having more literature reviews or having more studies done on that would definitely be more beneficial. And then also looking into do children show more emotional differences because of society? So when they're in front of their peers or when they're at school or they're at the park or wherever they may be, are their emotional differences different depending on who they're in front of? Are they different based off of where they're at compared to where they're at when they're at home? And then also, do gender differences still exist in the content? So aside from the thumbnail, are there gender differences shown in the content as well? And then we have our references. Thank you.